Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1995 video game martial arts film, Mortal Kombat. Now, I know for some reason this film has gotten a reputation nowadays for being cheesy, for being corny, for being lame. It's got a low rating on Rotten Tomatoes. You've got people talking about how fake Goro looks and how just unbelievably bad it is. And I don't care. I love this movie. I've always loved this film, and it's not just nostalgia talking, because the first Mortal Kombat movie that I actually remember watching was the second one, and I even thought that sucked even as a kid. I didn't watch this until later, and I just think it's a really fun blast of kicks, punches, fatalities. It's just a really good tournament movie, like an old school tournament fighting movie in the vein of Enter the Dragon. Now, Mortal Kombat is directed by Paul W.S. Anderson, and this was his second film. He had done a film called Shopping before this, and this was his first film that he did that had a pretty decent budget and for the American market. And I think he did a great job. I really do. I think he did a genuinely magnificent job for the kind of film that Mortal Kombat is. Mortal Kombat is an over the top, stylized beat 'em up. That's what it is. And it's fitting because that's what Mortal Kombat is as a video game. At least that's what it was at the time. Mortal Kombat got more mythology and more storylines and all of this other stuff later on after the film's release. But around this time, Mortal Kombat wasn't really something that had like a ton of lore. It was implied, and if you read some comics or did some other stuff involving the games, you could kind of get a little bit more out of it. But other than those things, Mortal Kombat was just they were just beat 'em up games. They were arcade style beat 'em up games where you got involved in a tournament and fought different combatants and fought them to the death. And I feel Paul really understood the concept here. And not only that, he had some serious passion for it. You could tell he was a fan of these games. You could tell that he was a fan of this overall opportunity. And as a result, I think he genuinely created something special. Uh, and his direction is honestly technically sound. There's actually some really creative, really unique camera work in this. There's even some cool POV shots, like the POV or the hard zoom on Shang Tsung's eye as a soul flies into it, or just the other various different ways that he shot the larger than life fantasy elements of the movie, like Goro or some of these other combatants in Mortal Kombat. And also the fights. Like that's the big selling point for this movie. Like that's pretty much what people are seeing a Mortal Kombat film for is the fights. And he shot them in a way that was just epic slam bang and just thrilling. Just did a great job just providing all of these fights with the right amount of impact and punch to them. And I feel when it comes to the moments that needed to provide some spectacle visually, I also feel he nailed that too. Like the arrival of the boat at the dock, the first reveal of the island, the various different shots that showcased the interiors and outworld and Shang Tsung's domain. There's just a lot about this film visually, in particular, that really pops. And it's in large part due to how Paul directed it. I also love the way he dealt with and utilized a lot of different lighting styles. There's a ton of different colors of lighting in this. It's almost like a kaleidoscope at points of color. and it makes for some really striking and genuinely cool shots. And yeah, I think he did a good job with the framing. I think he did a good job with utilizing different sort of camera angles and different pans and zooms and everything that comes with a capable or genuinely great directing job. So I feel he achieved a flawless victory for the kind of film that Mortal Kombat was. I feel he did that, and I still feel to this day that it's some of his best work as a director. Now, the film is written by Kevin Droney, and I think this script is great. I think this is a really overlooked screenplay. It takes elements of popular, well-known tournament fighting movies like Enter the Dragon or Bloodsport, and then puts a Mortal Kombat twist on it. Throws in some Mortal Kombat characters and creates something that I feel is a really fun mesh of the two. Uh, it does a really excellent job establishing its characters, its combatants early on, and then getting to the fighting. Like, it doesn't take its time with that. It doesn't drone on. He's not droning on about needless character depth or other stuff that you don't necessarily need in a Mortal Kombat movie. Uh, when you are gearing up and when you're ready to watch a Mortal Kombat movie, you want to see fights on top of fights. That's really what you want to see. You're not really there for Sonya Blade's character depth or any of that. But there's still enough depth to me and enough weight to things that I didn't feel like it was just a bunch of useless fighting, because of the fact that you still have the stuff established early on with Liu Kang and Shang Tsung having killed Liu Kang's brother. You have the other stuff with Sonya Blade and Kano. You have, you know, the stuff with Johnny Cage. There really isn't a ton there, but that's fine because a lot of his character is him just being the cocky movie star who's got a heart of gold and has just 10 carat charisma. Like, so you genuinely can just kind of, put that aside and be okay with that. And I do like that there's a really cool setting for the tournament too. It's this island that is just gorgeous to look at, and they actually shot on location. I genuinely do feel that Outworld looks like some kind of other dimension due to the art direction and the production design. Like I said, it doesn't take long at all when it comes to this script and the story to get to the fighting. I even like the way that Scorpion and Sub-Zero are introduced on the boat. I think that was really cool, and it gives you a taste of what's to come, but doesn't, give it away right off the bat. And then once you get to, the scene where a bunch of henchmen of Shang Tsung decide to crash the dinner party, you get the start of a multitude of really exciting, fun fight scenes. And then you get, of course, the tournament fights. And the one problem that I have with the tournament fights is that Kano was killed a little bit too early for me. I feel the way that the writer set up Kano, he set him up really well, and he was a fun villain, and he was the kind of villain you love to hate. And so for him to die that early, I felt that was kind of lame. I understood why they did it. I understood why the writer decided to take that choice and run with it, but I disagree with it. I really do. But other than that, I don't have an issue with it. I genuinely like what they do with Goro, setting him up to be this monster. He's literally a monster, but they set him up as a monster in the ring too, just taking out people right and left. So then when Johnny Cage takes him out, it's all the more surprising and satisfying. And speaking of Johnny Cage, he is a prime example of why I genuinely love this script, because there are just so many fun one-liners that this character has in this that just make this film into something that's just so much fun to watch every time that I decide to sit down and watch it. And it's not just Johnny Cage. Like the screenwriter does a good job giving Sonya Blade some good quips, as well as Liu Kang and the villains as well. You know, Kano, Shang Tsung, um, Goro, not so much, but you know, it's just more of a monster of a few words, so to speak. But I mean, there's stuff that you can still quote to this day. Those are $500 sunglasses, asshole. Now's the part where you fall down. Yeah, you know, there's just a lot of stuff about this script that I genuinely really enjoy. I know some people have an issue with Scorpion and Sub-Zero. I have one problem with the Scorpion fight, and that's just how Scorpion wouldn't shut up throughout the fight and kept saying lame things. I get it. Get over here. Come here. And then that other thing that he said, that was just lame. But other than that, I don't have a problem with it. I know people have an issue with it because they're more like henchmen of Shang Tsung and they get dispatched pretty easily. But that's the nature of Mortal Kombat. Like, I mean, if you play Mortal Kombat, like there are times where you fight Sub-Zero, Scorpion, and you dispatch them. So, like, I don't necessarily think that them getting dispatched is necessarily an issue, honestly, at all. And neither is them being henchmen of Shang Tsung. That's just how things are set up when it comes to this script. Shang Tsung has to have his own army to go up against the Earth Realm heroes. There are some other things though that other than the stuff with Sonya and Kano, like the stuff with Liu Kang and Katana, like I could just take or leave that. It seemed like Katana was just there to give him cheat codes or to remind him of certain things. And honestly, I would have been okay with her not even really being there or not even really doing anything. She doesn't really add much to the movie anyway. And by not having a lot of scenes with her and Liu Kang, then you can have more scenes with Liu Kang and Johnny Cage, because the two of them when they're together as a duo, it is such a really fun pair to watch. Uh, so I would have been okay if you had more of that and less of the stuff with Liu Kang and Katana. Also, it's not like they really get involved when it comes to a romantic relationship, at least not in a significant way. And I think that might have been what was shot initially, but that was cut out for pacing. There's this whole stuff involving either Johnny and Sonya or Liu Kang and Katana, and they were supposed to have some sort of romantic thing. And Paul W.S. Anderson, I think he was the one who was like, "Nah, let's cut that out because we just want more fight. We want fights on top of fights. We want people to just get a continual adrenaline shot with this film." And I think that was the right choice. I really do. Um, I really like the climax. I don't have a problem with it. Except some of the fighters that Liu Kang fights are kind of kind of ridiculous. I mean, a guy in a samurai suit, like, and some other like fat guy. Like, I think they could have done a bit of a better job in terms of having the other fighters that Shang Tsung is using during that final fight. Because, I mean, prior to that, you had the reptile fight, which was incredible, which I genuinely feel is like one of the better fights of the 90s. And I know that sounds like a crazy thought, but I genuinely feel that way. That fight is so good. It's such an awesome fight. And it just gets my blood pumping. And every time I watch it, it gives me such a rush. And the fight with Shang Tsung isn't necessarily the same, but I like that the script found a way to work around the physical limitations of the actor, Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa. Like, he's not a guy who's gonna do a lot of martial arts and stuff. That's not really his thing. So I appreciate that he played a lot of mind games and was trying to mess with Liu Kang and did the whole stuff with him disguising himself as Liu Kang's brother. And Liu Kang sees through all that and then kicks his ass. And I actually like the way it ends. Like, it does seem like something that could be a sequel bait sort of thing, which it really is. It's not could be, it is a sequel bait ending. But it didn't bother me because I had such a blast and I enjoyed the overall journey so much that I wanted more of it anyway. But then Mortal Kombat Annihilation came out and annihilated my dreams and my hopes for this franchise. But we'll get to that soon enough. But yeah, I genuinely think this is a really solid, really good script for the kind of film that this is. It doesn't take long at all in terms of getting to the tournament and starting the fighting. Yes, it's PG-13, but I feel that they worked around it well enough by still having some unique and some, you know, gooey fatalities. They got away with as much as they possibly could, and it didn't seem like it was like a kids show or anything. It didn't seem like it was PG Mortal Kombat. It's not Mortal Kombat Conquest or anything, or the cartoon. I didn't really feel that way just because it didn't have blood and gore. Yeah, I mean, you could look at some other stuff like Raiden is just I don't even know what his purpose is half the time. He's just kind of there and says some platitudes or words of encouragement and just kind of a prankster. But I feel that worked all right for me because it just added to the whole fun vibe of the overall story and the script. And there are some other things that the screenwriter isn't to blame for. It's not like the screenwriter is to blame for the dated 90s CGI. He had nothing to do with that. So if you look at the script as it is, other than maybe killing Kano off a little bit too early, and having the whole Liu Kang katana stuff that didn't really do that much for me, it's a solid and good script. It's it wins in its own right. Now, as good as the direction is and the script is, the cast is a big part of what makes this film such a gem. Robin Shou as Liu Kang. There are some moments early on where his line delivery isn't the best, but he gets better as the film goes on, and he makes up for it with his physicality and his skill as a martial artist. The man is really fantastic. Like, he is such a incredible talent when it comes to fight choreography and just martial arts in general, and he doesn't get enough credit for that. And he's just so talented and so tremendous when it comes to his art. And when you see him at work in this, it is just absolutely masterful, and it's just so enthralling to watch just to see him do do the most damage he possibly can on screen and to all of his opponents. And I know he wasn't I guess he was the first choice, but he initially turned it down because he thought he was just going to play another bad guy, but then thankfully he agreed once he read the script and saw that he was going to be the lead. Uh, because he initially turned it down, the studio was looking at potential other options like Jason Scott Lee, but he turned it down. They also looked at Dustin Nguyen, who was in 21 Jump Street, the TV show, but he didn't take the role. So Robin eventually agreed to do it, and the rest is history. And I think he played a really good Liu Kang. To me, he will always be Liu Kang. There is no other Liu Kang to me. Now, Linden Ashby, I thought he did for the most part a pretty awesome job as Johnny Cage. Um, but he wasn't the first choice. They actually had cast Brandon Lee, but Brandon couldn't do it because of the on-set accident that killed him on the set of The Crow. I love Lyndon Ashby in this. I think he's charismatic, he's charming, he has some really great witty line delivery. He is just really good when it comes to the comedic aspects of Johnny Cage. But I just wish we had Brandon Lee because Brandon Lee, no offense to Linden Ashby, he's a capable martial artist himself, but he's no Brandon Lee. And Brandon Lee has a certain charisma and charm all his own as well that I just wish was in this movie. I wish he was able to interact with Robin Shou, and he would have done just as good of a job with the one-liners as Lyndon Ashby. But because of the unfortunate circumstances, Lyndon was able to step into the role, and he made it his own. And I still feel that he is a major part of why I genuinely love this movie. So I could have loved it even more if Brandon Lee was Johnny Cage, but I still really, really like what Lyndon Ashby brought to the film. Now I know that Bridgette Wilson, who ultimately was cast to play Sonya Blade, she wasn't the first choice either. Actually, Cameron Diaz was cast in the role, which hurt her wrist, and so she couldn't do the film anymore. So they went with Bridgette Wilson, and I genuinely feel that was a good choice. As much as I like Cameron Diaz, I don't know if I can necessarily buy her in this role. I felt that Bridgette Wilson was very believable when it comes to the physical stuff, when it comes to Sonya Blade, and I just really liked her chemistry with Lyndon Ashby. And I don't really know if the chemistry would be the same with a different actress. Trevor Goddard played Kano. He wasn't in it a lot, but he made the most out of what little screen time he had. Just a really memorable, fun villain performance. And you could just tell that he was loving the opportunity to play such a scumbag. Uh, and of course, speaking of scumbags, you got Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa, Shang Tsung. Now, he was the only choice. In fact, he actually showed up to the audition in costume and stood on top of a chair and like just completely nailed the audition. And it's easily his most memorable and iconic role, if you ask me. Your soul is mine. Like he was over the top and hammy at points, but that's Shang Tsung, so it worked. I didn't have a problem with it, and he was just so much fun to watch playing this evil sorcerer. And Christopher Lambert, I also enjoyed as Raiden. It just had this snarkiness about him that was just endearing. Raiden is kind of boring in some of the video games. Here, he's entertaining. It's almost like he's a troll who's like trolling people along the way, with his snarky laugh, he's a, it's just, I enjoyed Christopher Lambert a lot in this. Um, but Sean Connery was actually their first choice, and he turned it down because he didn't want to do a lot of physical stuff, which is funny because Christopher Lambert didn't wind up doing a ton of physical stuff as Raiden anyway. You also have Talisa Soto as Katana. I don't really think that she's really that great of an actress. She's pretty bad, actually. She's nice to look at, but she's not a good actress at all. Um, and there's a few other people when it comes to the cast, but really those are the main performers, and I feel they all did a good job, especially Robin Shou, Lyndon Ashby, and Bridgette Wilson. Like the three of them were a terrific trio. They had tremendous chemistry, and they were really good together. And I wish they were all together for another movie or multiple films, but we only got one. And I want to give Tom Woodruff Jr. some credit, who played the physical Goro. He was in the suit playing Goro. So I want to give him some credit too, as well as a lot of the people who play the Scorpion and Sub-Zero. Keith Cook was one of them, I believe, and just everybody involved that did any of the fighting in this. And speaking of that, I want to give a shout out to the fight choreographer for this, who is the same fight choreographer as the Karate Kid and the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I thought it was a really cool thing. I did not know that, actually. And I'm like, wow, that explains it. That's why the fight choreography in this is so good, because you got the same guy behind those movies who did the fight choreography for this. Now, I also want to mention real quick the makeup effects for Goro, because they get a lot of crap and I don't get it. I felt the makeup effects artists, they did a really remarkable job. I think Goro looks great. I don't think it's a cheesy looking or a cheap looking or a fake looking effect at all. I think they really did a good job when it comes to the makeup effects for Goro. Now, it's got some cinematography by John R. Leonetti, which is good. It looks good for this kind of film. You know, it's a $20 million production. Definitely is a film that looks rather nice. I feel that his vision seemed to match pretty clearly with what Paul W.S. Anderson had in mind for the film. The editing by Martin Hunter I thought was really great. I thought that was some really amazing stuff. A lot of the fights in this are very kind of fast and frenetic, and a lot of the film has this sort of fast and frenetic sort of look to it. And I think the editing is a big part of what makes that able to be something that becomes a boon for the film and not a distraction or a detriment. And other things I want to mention, like, yeah, the CGI at points is kind of dated and looks kind of bad, but I do think it has some good visual effects. I do think that the production and art design was really good in terms of the sets. And I think the score by George S. Clinton, I also think that was also really well done. Even the orchestral bits, even the other bits that weren't just the techno EDM music, which yeah, the techno EDM music is also excellent. Um, a big part of what makes this film just such an absolute classic in a lot of ways is also that the soundtrack. There's a reason why the soundtrack, I think it went platinum, and it was like the first EDM album that ever did that, because it's just got some really great bangers, so to speak, when it comes to the songs. I mean, the Mortal Kombat theme is still to this day one of the most iconic and instantly recognizable songs or themes or bits of music that has ever been featured in any film. When you hear that the guy go Mortal Kombat, you know, like, you know, you're in for a killer uh, track. Now, the film was a massive hit, and it deserved it. It deserved it. It was a deserving success. And for whatever reason, though, despite it being a massively successful film for New Line and Entertainment, whether through the theatrical release or home video releases, it's just got nothing but bare bones treatment on physical media. There's not one but two different making of documentaries from back in the day that were never included in any release of Mortal Kombat on home video. And a lot of people involved with the movie have done reunions, they've done Comic-Con panels, they've done all kinds of stuff, but for whatever reason Warner Brothers decides to just give us nothing. Give fans of this film nothing when it comes to this movie, and it's a damn disgrace. It really is. This film deserves so much better than a bare bones Blu-ray. This should get a 4K special edition, loaded with a ton of features, with interviews of cast and crew, a feature-length documentary. It really does deserve that, if you ask me. Because this was the first video game movie that the public as a whole found to be acceptable and enjoyable. Because prior to that, Street Fighter, Double Dragon, Super Mario Brothers. I liked the Super Mario Brothers movie, but that was not widely accepted or widely loved as much as Mortal Kombat was. That was the first video game movie where people were like, this might work. You know, this actually can work. Maybe we were wrong to judge these video game movies initially. You can actually make a fun, legitimately good a movie that's worth watching again and again based on a video game. Uh, so in that regard, it deserves better just because of that, because of how genuinely influential the film was. But that's just my thoughts on Mortal Kombat. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.